Hey everyone, welcome back to Pop Culture Pulse, your daily dose of fascinating stories shaping our world. You might think of the 90s as the decade of grunge and dial-up. But hold on tight, because today we're diving into how this era laid the groundwork for the world we live in now. From political scandals that rocked the nation, to the birth of music streaming and the dawn of the 24/7 news cycle. The 90s were a wild ride that set the stage for the 21st century. Let's unpack this.
What's fascinating is how seemingly isolated events in the 90s connect directly to our lives today. It's like a chain reaction of innovation and disruption playing out over decades.
Okay, so let's rewind to 1998, when a little thing called the internet was just starting to make waves. Remember the Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky scandal? Well, it wasn't just about the events themselves. It was about how those events were reported and disseminated.
This was the first time a presidency was nearly toppled by the power of technology and the rising influence of the internet. The Drudge Report, a then modest blog breaking that story, was a pivotal moment.
It really exposed how the internet was starting to challenge traditional media as gatekeepers of information.
Absolutely. Suddenly, bloggers were competing with established news outlets, and the public had access to information from a wider range of sources. This was a major shift in the power dynamics of media.
And with that shift came the rise of the 24/7 news cycle. Fueled by the internet's constant flow of information, we were no longer getting news in neatly packaged daily doses. It was a fire hose of updates and analysis, constantly vying for our attention.
The Lewinsky scandal wasn't just a political event, it was a preview of how the internet would transform news and information forever. It's hard to imagine a world without instant access to news and the constant updates we've become accustomed to.
And speaking of disruptions, the music industry also experienced a seismic shift with the arrival of Napster. Remember when you could suddenly download any song you wanted for free? It felt like the future of music had arrived, but the industry saw it as a threat.
Napster challenged the very foundations of the music industry's business model. It made millions of songs instantly accessible. And while it ultimately faced legal challenges and shut down, its impact is undeniable.
It really forced everyone to rethink music ownership in the digital age.
Absolutely. Bands like Metallica even took legal action against Napster for copyright infringement. Their concerns were understandable. They were fighting to protect their livelihoods and their art.
But you could say Napster's demise planted the seeds for the streaming giants we have today, like Spotify and Apple Music. Could you imagine your life without them?
It's a classic example of how disruptive technologies often face resistance, but can ultimately lead to innovation and new ways of doing things. This pattern repeats itself throughout history. The invention of the printing press, the advent of radio, each new technology disrupts the status quo and eventually leads to new possibilities.
And speaking of groundbreaking technology, the 1990s also witnessed a revolution in how we experience conflict. The world's first televised war broadcast in real time. I'm talking about the Gulf War.
The Gulf War coverage marked a significant shift in how we experience conflict. The immediacy and accessibility of information had a profound impact on public perception and even influenced decision-making at the highest levels.
CNN brought the battlefield directly into living rooms worldwide, providing immediate information even to government officials.
What's particularly noteworthy is that this revolution was powered by TV satellite technology. The ability to transmit live footage from the front lines via satellite completely changed the game.
It really highlights how technology can reshape our understanding of global events. It fostered a sense of immediacy and connection that was unprecedented. We could no longer ignore what was happening in other parts of the world. We were all witnesses.
Exactly. The way we consume war and conflict today with constant updates and live streams can be traced back to those groundbreaking broadcasts of the Gulf War.
And back on the home front, the brutal beating of Rodney King by police officers captured on a bystander's video camera exposed the racial tensions simmering beneath the surface. This grainy video, endlessly replayed on TV, forced America to confront police brutality. It was a pivotal moment in the conversation about race and policing in America.
The Rodney King incident forced us to confront the realities of police brutality and racial injustice. It became a symbol of a system in need of urgent attention. And that message continues to resonate.
It's a conversation that continues today. Think about the impact of smartphone footage on similar events. The ability to document and share these incidents has sparked national movements and demands for accountability.
Technology can be a powerful tool for social change. By documenting and disseminating evidence of injustice, it can raise awareness and mobilize people to demand accountability. The Rodney King video was a stark reminder of that power.
It really makes you think about the evolving relationship between technology, social justice, and the media. All of these threads were starting to intertwine in the 90s in ways that continue to shape our world today.
And speaking of shifting landscapes, let's turn our attention to another event that revealed America's growing political divide. The 2000 Bush-Gore election. It was a nail-biter that came down to a handful of votes in Florida.
Oh yeah, the infamous hanging chads controversy. It felt like the whole country was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome.
The controversy surrounding those hanging chads and the subsequent legal battles exposed vulnerabilities in our electoral process. It also highlighted the deep partisan divisions that were emerging in American politics.
It's unsettling to see how some of the issues that dominated the 1990s are still very much with us today. Political polarization, the power of technology to shape narratives. These themes continue to resonate.
The 1990s were a period of immense change, and many of those changes continue to shape our world. It's a reminder that history isn't just something we read about in textbooks. It informs the present and influences the future.
So while we might associate the 90s with grunge fashion and dial-up internet, it's clear that this decade was about so much more. It was a turning point for technology, social change, and the way we understand the world around us.
And as we delve deeper into this decade, we'll uncover even more fascinating connections between those seemingly distant events and the world we inhabit today.
Stay tuned because we're just getting started.
The 1990s weren't just about political scandals and technological upheavals. It was also a decade of significant social and cultural shifts, some subtle, some seismic.
You're right, it's like the 90s were this breeding ground for new ideas and movements that are still shaping conversations today.
Exactly. And one of those movements that really took root in the 90s was third-wave feminism, which challenged traditional gender roles and pushed for a more inclusive understanding of women's rights.
Now, when we talk about third-wave feminism, what sets it apart from previous waves of the movement?
Well, third-wave feminism emerged as a response to what some saw as the shortcomings of second-wave feminism, which primarily focused on issues like reproductive rights and workplace equality. Third-wave feminists sought to broaden the conversation.
So they wanted to go beyond those core issues.
Exactly. They argued that women's experiences are shaped not just by gender, but by a whole intersection of factors like race, class, sexual orientation, and more. They brought a more nuanced and inclusive perspective to the table.
So it was about recognizing that not all women experience oppression in the same way.
Precisely. They challenged the notion of a monolithic woman's experience and pushed for a more intersectional approach to feminism, acknowledging the diverse realities of women from different backgrounds.
That's a really important point. It's about recognizing the complexity of identity and how different forms of oppression can overlap.
Absolutely. And third-wave feminists were instrumental in raising awareness about issues like sexual harassment, domestic violence, and rape. They also advocated for greater representation of women in media politics and other areas of public life.
It sounds like they made significant strides in pushing the conversation forward.
They did, but their efforts also faced pushback from those who felt threatened by these evolving ideas about gender roles and equality.
That's unfortunate. It seems like any movement for social change is bound to encounter resistance.
It's true. Progress rarely unfolds in a straight line. There are always going to be those who cling to the status quo and resist change.
Speaking of pushing for change, the 1990s also witnessed a growing movement for LGBTQ+ rights, a fight for equality and an end to discrimination.
Absolutely. The 90s saw increased visibility and activism within the LGBTQ+ community. People were demanding recognition, demanding their rights, and challenging deeply ingrained prejudices.
What were some of the key moments that defined this movement during the 90s?
Well, one significant development was the introduction of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in 1993. This policy allowed gay and lesbian individuals to serve in the U.S. military as long as they kept their sexual orientations secret.
It sounds like a step forward, but also a compromise.
Exactly. It was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it allowed gay and lesbian individuals to serve their country openly. On the other hand, it forced them to conceal a fundamental part of their identity.
It highlights the complexities of progress. Sometimes it comes in incremental steps rather than sweeping changes.
That's true. And while Don't Ask, Don't Tell was eventually repealed, it reflects the ongoing struggle for LGBTQ+ rights, a battle fought on many fronts.
And it's important to remember that the 90s were also the peak of the AIDS epidemic, which had a devastating impact on the LGBTQ+ community. This wasn't just a health crisis, it was a social and political crisis fueled by stigma and misinformation.
You're absolutely right. The AIDS epidemic brought immense suffering and loss to the LGBTQ+ community, and it also exposed the deep-seated prejudices and inequalities that existed.
It's heartbreaking to think about the discrimination and fear that people living with AIDS faced during that time.
It was a dark chapter, but it also ignited a powerful wave of activism and advocacy. People came together to fight for better treatment, to challenge stigma, and to demand recognition of the humanity of those affected by the virus.
It's a testament to the resilience of the LGBTQ+ community, their ability to come together in the face of adversity and fight for their rights and their lives.
Absolutely. Their courage, their activism, and their unwavering commitment to justice laid the groundwork for the progress we've seen in LGBTQ+ rights in subsequent years.
It's a reminder that change doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of countless acts of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of a more just and equitable world.
And as we continue our exploration of the 1990s, we'll see how this decade was a crucible for these movements for social change, setting the stage for many of the conversations we're still having today.
It's fascinating to see how these threads of history weave together, shaping the present and influencing the future. And speaking of shaping the future, let's turn our attention to another force that was transforming the world in the 90s, the Internet.
The internet in the 90s, it wasn't just about dial-up modems and clunky websites. It was a cultural earthquake, a complete paradigm shift in how we connected, communicated, and consumed information.
It's mind-boggling to think how much the Internet has transformed our lives in just a few decades. It's almost like we're living in a different world compared to the pre-Internet era.
Absolutely. The internet's impact on the 90s was nothing short of revolutionary. It democratized access to information, connected people across geographical boundaries, and created entirely new avenues for commerce and entertainment.
Remember those early days of chat rooms and online forums? It was like stepping into a whole new universe where you could connect with people who shared your interests no matter where they were in the world.
It was a truly transformative experience for many, especially for those who felt marginalized or misunderstood in their offline lives. The internet provided a sense of community and belonging that was previously unimaginable.
And let's not forget the impact on information access. Suddenly, you didn't have to rely on traditional gatekeepers like libraries or news organizations to get information. The internet became this vast digital library where knowledge was just a click away.
It empowered individuals in ways we're still grappling with today. It gave people a voice, a platform to share their ideas, connect with like-minded individuals, and challenge established narratives.
But it also came with its own set of challenges, right? I mean, the internet wasn't all sunshine and roses.
You're right. The internet also brought with it issues like misinformation, cyberbullying, and the need for digital literacy. It became clear that this new technology was a powerful tool, but one that required careful navigation and critical thinking.
It's fascinating how those early challenges of the internet are still relevant today. We're still grappling with how to foster a healthy and informed online environment, how to combat misinformation, and how to empower users to be discerning consumers of digital content.
It's an ongoing evolution. The internet is constantly changing, adapting, and presenting new challenges. It's a testament to its transformative power, that we're still figuring out how to harness its potential while mitigating its risks.
And speaking of transformative power, let's not forget the impact of the 90s on the world of entertainment. This was a decade that saw a renaissance in television programming, with shows that pushed boundaries and redefined genres.
Absolutely. From iconic sitcoms like Friends and Seinfeld to groundbreaking dramas like ER and The X-Files, the 90s gave us characters and storylines that continue to resonate with audiences today.
These shows weren't just entertainment. They reflected the social and cultural anxieties of the time, exploring themes of relationships, identity, and the changing world.
Friends, for example, captured the zeitgeist of a generation navigating life, love, and careers in a rapidly evolving urban landscape. It became a cultural touchstone for young adults grappling with the complexities of modern life.
And Seinfeld, with its self-proclaimed status as a show about nothing, brilliantly satirized the minutiae of everyday life. Its witty observations and relatable characters resonated with audiences who saw their own lives reflected in its absurd scenarios.
Then you had groundbreaking dramas like ER, which offered a raw and unflinching look into the world of emergency medicine. It revolutionized the medical drama with its fast-paced action, complex characters, and willingness to tackle tough social issues.
And who could forget the X-Files? With its blend of science fiction, horror, and conspiracy theories, it tapped into a growing fascination with the paranormal and the unknown, exploring themes of trust, government secrecy, and the search for truth.
These shows weren't just entertainment, they were cultural barometers, reflecting the hopes, fears, and anxieties of a nation on the cusp of a new millennium.
And let's not forget the rise of cable television in the 90s, which brought with it a wave of edgier and more experimental programming. Channels like HBO and MTV challenged the dominance of traditional network television, offering viewers a wider range of content and perspectives.
HBO, in particular, became known for its high-quality dramas like Oz and Sex and the City, which tackled controversial subjects with a boldness that was unheard of on network television.
It was a time of experimentation and innovation in the television landscape,
Yeah.
paving the way for the diverse and complex storytelling we see today.
The 90s truly were a pivotal decade for television. It was a time when the medium came into its own, exploring new narratives, pushing boundaries, and reflecting the changing social and cultural landscape.
As we wrap up our exploration of the 1990s, it's clear that this decade was more than just a collection of trends and events. It was a period of profound transformation, a time when the seeds of the 21st century were sown.
From the rise of the internet to the evolution of television, the 90s fundamentally reshaped the way we communicate, consume information, and understand the world around us.
It was a decade of contradictions and complexities, a time of both progress and backlash. But above all, it was a time of incredible creativity, innovation, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
And as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, it's crucial to remember the lessons of the 90s, a decade that reminds us of the power of technology, the importance of social change, and the enduring human spirit that drives us forward.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the 1990s, a decade that changed everything.
It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating era with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Pulse. We'll be back tomorrow with another deep dive into a pivotal moment that shaped our world. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.